Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 13th work session of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners. At this time, I will call the meeting to order and ask Vice Chairman Morris to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and give us the strength and the wisdom to try to govern properly and do what's best for our people in Harnett County. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Okay, this time I'll consider any additions and deletions to the published agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the published agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Opioid Task Force and Settlement Dollars Information Session for local municipalities. Coley and Chris. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hope everybody is well this morning. This is our annual report to the Board of Commissioners and our municipalities, the mayors, the commissioners, and the managers. I received an email about a month ago inviting them to this meeting for any questions, concerns, ideas. We always like to invite them to this and to be a part of our task force. So first of all, let me say thank you to each of you for your support. It has been a very good 2.5 years as far as the task force and where we stand and the foundation that we have laid, and I appreciate all your support. So let me and Chris just go briefly give you a few updates. We'll answer any questions that you may have as a board, and then we'll turn it over to anybody from the municipalities that may be here to speak as far as the task force. So first of all, the first one is National Drug Court Month, and in your May 19th meeting, you're going to see a resolution. And what I would like to do is thank our DA's office, Zane, and our Veterans Treatment Court, one of the best in the state. I appreciate all the efforts there. Eric and his staff as the veterans are concerned, the judges, and everybody that's associated with this. This is kind of the top tier. We had 16 priorities when we did our opioid task force strategic plan, and we are building that foundation and rising up to a drug treatment court. That is our ultimate goal. Chris and I have already met with judges. We've met with the DA. They have our full support, and what we would like to do is take Zane's organization and combine that at some point, because the judges are already on board with that, and it's already a perfect model for what we want to try to do with a drug treatment court. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. We are getting in steps with that. We obviously don't like to do anything without sustainability, so we're looking at funding efforts to see if we can make that work. So now Chris is going to talk a little bit about the settlement dollars, and we'll give you a few updates in between.
All right, so I wanted to give you an update on where the settlement stands right now. There's been a few more that have come through, so we are now up to, over the 18-year period, to receive a little over $11.9 million. As you can see here, this is the updated payout chart over the 18-year period. As I previously mentioned, it's front-loaded for this first few years, and then gradually tiers down when you get up to year 18 of this. To date, we have received a little over $3.6 million that's been put in its own separate fund as required by the MOA. What's nice is it's also gained interest of $203,000, so we are a little over $3.8 million received to date. Just want to talk about what we've allocated so far. So far we've had $215,000 dedicated to the MAT-MOUD program over at the Harnett County Detention Center to be able to be spent for medical services, as well as the jail reentry navigator position held by Scarlett, who's here with us today. Then $20,000 allocated for the purchase of Narcan for community distribution, including the school system, and that's run through the health department. $35,000 allocated for Recovery Alive to establish a recovery home, and then a little over $230,000 for North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition for years 2 and 3 of a 3-year contract. They're currently operating in their first year right now. That is being funded by our MCO Alliance Health. So move on to successes.
All right, so the timeline for January of 2025, I hired a new coordinator, Charlie Pelosi is here, that you met. Charlie doing a great job, and appreciate all his efforts to try to keep me and Chris straight. Our subcommittees continue to meet on a monthly basis. As you're well aware, through our task force, we have Education and Prevention Subcommittee, a Treatment and Recovery Subcommittee, and a Harm Reduction Subcommittee. And then the executive team is formed from that. And then once that is brought to the subcommittees, the executive committee takes a look at it, and then we bring it to the Board of Commissioners for your approval. So as Chris just mentioned, that's where the funds have been spent. You can also see harm reduction. That has been a breath of fresh air in North Carolina harm reduction. I'll talk a little bit later as we go through these slides. But you can see everything that's happened as far as the bullet points on these particular slides and kind of where we're at with those collaborative efforts. And I appreciate everything that Charlton and Greg and his staff are doing for us as far as they just started last month and they have hit the ground running. Okay, so as I mentioned, over the weekend, they just started like a couple of weeks ago, and you can see everything that they've done. So that they're looking at hot spots. We have heat maps that are generated by our GIS department, and so we know where the hot spots are at. So with the knowledge and experience that they bring to the table, that has been a tremendous asset. As Chris mentioned, Alliance Health, our LMC MCO, is sponsoring this for the first year, and then the task force will pick it up years 2 and 3. So what we've done is form this collaborative effort. We will have data for the first year, and then we will pick it up in years 2 and 3 and then build that relationship stronger. So very impressed with them, and they're doing a great job, and we meet with them on a regular basis.
So I was going to talk about some numbers. So this map right here is our Narcan distribution map. So obviously, per our settlement agreement with the MOA, the money has to be spent within the county. So this map, while it's not just the county, obviously it's being distributed in the county, and of course, individuals are taking it elsewhere. But in general, you can see how the Narcan's been distributed across this county and our immediate neighbors. So getting out there has been important, and it's been a good process of distribution. So going over stats, one highlight of this is the trend is it's getting better. So far in 2025, there have been 10 opioid overdose ED visits in Harnett County, comparing to 17 of last year. And of course, here you can see the breakdown of the reasons or what the overdoses are resulting from. I say fentanyl still being an issue, as you can see that's in the purple color. So moving on to other data. So fentanyl positive deaths in Harnett County in year 2024 is 16 compared to 51 in 2023. So obviously much better numbers. It's still unfortunate that we're losing that many people, but obviously we're in a good trend, a downward trend right now. Hopefully that will continue. This is another slide regarding ED visits for overdose involving medications or drug dependency potential. Again, 154 in 2024, and then 256 in 2023. So again, just showing these numbers overall regarding overdose, regardless of what the substance is, we're seeing a downward trend. So again, positive. And then the last slide, this is overall North Carolina. So this is an overall picture that there is a decline across the state. Harnett County is doing really well. We're actually one of the top counties in reducing our deaths and overdoses, but this shows overall in North Carolina there's a lot of progress being made across the state. Again, 221 suspected overdose deaths as of February 25 compared to 264 in February 24. Again, still high numbers, but it is positive to see a decline in this.
And as I mentioned, there's the North Carolina Harm Reduction team with Shay Marie and Charlton and Greg. The next slide. So there's kind of where they're at. They've only been here a couple weeks, and like I said, they've hit the ground running, looking at the hot spots areas. Already made initial contact with Dunn PD. And then they're going out on the outreach of the hotels and the shops and different areas in our county. So like I said, we meet with them once a week. Charlie stays in contact with them. They meet with our community paramedics. They get addresses, and they go in and kind of be the liaison and the help and the hope that these folks need as far as what's happening in their recovery efforts. So glad to have them on board. And then, I mentioned the foundation, and it's this has been a long process, but what I appreciate is your support with doing not only this comprehensive strategic plan that we are following with our subcommittees and having a task force through Harnett County, but you can see over the last couple of years what's happening with the numbers that are coming down. And so big ticket items are drug treatment court, which I mentioned at first, peer support, which is going extremely well, and that's going to improve with the MOUD and MAT in our jail system. And then there's housing and transportation that are always a problem and a struggle. So we were fortunate enough to team up with Recovery Alive efforts. They put the first women's house of 6 women in the Dunn area last week. Chris and I spent over a year vetting this, putting this together, understanding who they are, what they're about. Went to Smithfield, Johnston County, talked with their commissioners. They totally support this. And so we have met with the city of Dunn numerous times as far as what's happening. This home was permitted by right. So this home could go anywhere in the county as far as zoning is concerned. What we're after is recovery. So that's what we supported as far as the efforts, and so that's another step in our strategic planning process. Now we're going to look at transportation behind that and job creation and peer support to help with the recovery efforts in the housing. There's the executive committee that I talked about. You can see very hardworking co-chairs and the committees that were formed. Folks, we started with 6 or 8 people 2.5 years ago in a room, and everybody was on islands, and all of a sudden it grew to 20, it grew to 30, it grew to 40, and now we have hospital administrators, we have faith-based leaders, we have elected officials, the sheriff's office, the DAs. I can go on and on and on, but we're all singing off the same sheet of music, and most of that comes from your vision and your support. So we could have just come in and bought Narcan and said, here you go, but we have a plan in place, and so that's what I appreciate. Even the school system, Commissioner Matthews have been well on board with this, with Dr. White, and has been a tremendous asset. It is a big feat to go do the training and put all the Narcan on the school buses, but you're about that close from making that happen. I appreciate all the efforts of the school system as well. Go ahead.
Again, just showing some of the main accomplishments to date under one, to prevent harmful substance use. The Harnett County Schools hired clinical social worker. Campbell University and local faith leaders have had a Recovery Hope Conference, continued collaboration with community and faith-based organizations. Supporting treatment and recovery, again, the big thing is our MAT program in the jail. And I know, you ask anyone, it may start a little slower than we hoped. Like anything, when you start something, it's tough. But there's a lot of positive things coming out of this. If you saw on the previous timeline, I think I really want to highlight on 2 big success stories. But one is a female that was released from jail, has reached 5 months in the community, being released and continuing her treatment. So she's pregnant, healthy, obtained housing and employment. That's a direct result of the MUD program and the commitment of the task force and the commissioners of supporting that program. Because every life change matters at the end of the day. And so that is a positive story. Sent another young male via bus to treatment in Knoxville. He's receiving treatment for a year and has since been baptized as well. So again, the numbers are increasing over the jail, and there is positive outcomes resulting from this. And the big thing is they're recovering. They're not coming back through the jail system. So big changes coming from that. Also want to highlight our community paramedic program. Continues to expand to support individuals. We have the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition that is teamed up with them. And that's a positive collaboration right there. Reducing harm, again, distributing Narcan kits. Harnett County Schools all have Narcan, which has been a positive thing. Trained over 100 staff members to administer it. Still preparing to launch Narcan on the school buses. I know there's some logistics going to be able to train individuals, but that's still going to happen. And then counties range to receive allocation-free Narcan from Alliance Health has been a great partner in this process. So what's next?
All right, so before I get to what's next, let me also say the collaborative efforts we've had with the Campbell University Public Health Department, Dr. David Tillman and his staff, and then obviously our own health department with Ainsley and her staff, been a tremendous asset, tremendous collaborative efforts as far as putting all this together and seeing what you're seeing right now over the last couple of years. So we're going to continue to do that, the policies and procedures, community-based naloxone distribution. Ainsley goes out now and does all kinds of outreach as far as the county is concerned in different areas of the county, especially on our interstate, our hotels and things of that nature. Chris mentioned the harm reduction. We'll continue to reach out to them. Beginning 24-25, the school year, he's talked about that as far as all the members of the school bus and launched the programs for the kits. They have been trained and are ready to roll with that. And members to support a parent advocacy group and expanding post-overdose response team. So that's the bullets of kind of where we're at, what you're going to see happen in the near future that is following this strategic plan, and I appreciate all the efforts of the task force.
And in the final, just part of this, obviously we'll field any questions. Final part was to give you an update, but also per the MOA, section E.4, we're supposed to hold an annual meeting where we invite all the municipalities to provide any input that they would like to have. So we did reach out to management and mayors of each municipality. I know we have at least one representative for our towns here. So unless you all have any questions, obviously we want to open it up if there's any input from our municipal leaders who are in here. But again, appreciate all your support and appreciate all of our partners in this process.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
I have comments, and thank you for allowing me to say this. First of all, let me say that I appreciate the hard work that you guys have done since we organized the task force. I remember that, what was it,
2.5 years, or going on 3 years, yeah.
And I have attended the meetings for
Yeah.
all those years on sitting on the education committee. And the reason I attend these meetings is because at first, me and Commissioner Witherspoon was assigned to attend these meetings. And I really appreciate what you have done because many counties are not as far as we are. I made a report when I went to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. I was the one to speak for Harnett County, and my subject was the task force. We wasn't given this money to just sit on this money. And you guys have taken this money and you have moved this program throughout this county. Many of you don't understand how important it is that we do something about the drug issue in our county. It affects young people and it affects whole families' lives. And so whatever we can do, I think it should be really appreciated. I know you put a whole lot of work in it. Cody, I don't know how you do what you do. I'll be very honest with you. But I need a favor from you.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to add more to you. I'm going to ask you to add more to you. I had, in 2020, I worked on the expungement program for Harnett County. And at that time when I was working on the expungement program for Harnett County, we moved that plan all the way through until COVID hit. We were at the last step, and that was presenting it to the public. And we couldn't meet because the county shut down all the meetings. We had Bishop Hinton on the board for the expungement. And for those who don't know what an expungement is, the expungement is, for many people, they have made a mistake in their lives that a one-time felony event. That upsets their whole life, and especially for employment. They're not able to get jobs just because they have made one mistake in their life. Now, the DA at that time, he was on top of it. He and I and about 20 citizens, the DA from Cumberland County, many people that was on top of this problem from Cumberland County, they came to Harnett County to meet with us. We had a full committee, and we met about a year in order to put everything in place. We got it all in place, and then COVID hit, and we couldn't meet for the final meeting with the public to make it official. Since then, I've been trying to ask for and form a meeting with the DA here, the new DA. I have called the former DA. The former DA has told me, Miss Barbara, whatever you need me to do, I'll do, because I helped put this program forward. But the present DA, the DA we have now, refuses to meet, even to discuss it. And that is a big part of this program, because no one that has made one mistake in their life should have to pay for that mistake all their lives. I met a young man down at a Food Line, and he came out and he helped me put my plastic bags in this thing. And he said, ma'am, don't you do that, let me help you. And then I said, well, haven't seen you here. And he started explaining his situation, that he made a mistake. He went to prison, made it one time, and he said, but he couldn't get a job. For 6 years, he could not get a job, nowhere, but Food Line hired him, and he was the happiest person I ever seen. What I'm asking you is, let me meet with you all, and we need to add this to our opioid program, because I think it's fitting. It's very fitting for it to go into the opioid program. Ainsley, I want to say I appreciate you, because when you got moved up to the director of the health department, you moved into the program and you started doing whatever you could to assist with this opioid stuff we have in this county. I want to say stuff, but it's opioid problem that we have in this county. Many of you don't realize what that does to our county. It handicaps our county, because it handicaps our young people. I'm only asking for one one-time felony. But I would appreciate it if you all would meet with her. She knows the condition, she knows what we're trying to do. Since I started approaching her, she's stopped coming to the opioid meetings. I mean, this is not for me. I don't have the time, but I have took the time personally to push it through. I am so proud. The reason I put myself in this, I'm so proud my kids are not into drugs. But who knows what the future holds? This world is full of stress. And I'm asking you to approach her and let us add that expungement program to our opioid program. They had in Cumberland County, and there are many criminals across this state that do have it. And I don't understand her position why she doesn't want to do it.
Okay.
I mean, she didn't got to do the work. I did the work prior to her being elected. We all can do the work. It's all, we've done everything we needed to do, except for the last step.
Okay. I will be glad to set that meeting, and it kind of goes hand in hand with our next step is to bring back our reentry program, because the reentry program happened the exact same time you said this did.
Exactly. I was there too. I was meeting with the reentry, and the people that was over reentry, they were doing a wonderful job. In fact, they were using the Sharptown Community Center.
That's correct. That's
they were
correct.
using, they had an office set up in there, and they had a great office set up in there, and
Sure.
very committed people to run that program.
That's correct.
No one needs to be labeled for the rest of their life because they made one mistake. So I'm asking you.
I'll be glad to take a look at that.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Sure. If there's no other questions from me and Chris, Mr. Chairman, I ask that you open it up for the municipalities to have a chance to speak and give their input.
Thank you. Yeah, if anybody from any of the municipalities would like to come up and speak, please.
I don't have any complaints. Good morning, members of the board. I just want to thank Coley and Chris for all their hard work on this. No, I think it's a good plan, so thank y'all for your time.
Thank you much.
Good morning, I'm Barbara Hollern. I'm the new manager in Coates, and I just wanted to say I found this very informative, and thank you for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yeah, good deal. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We'll do the North Harnett Transit Study presentation and discuss a request to consider approving and endorsing the North Harnett Transit Study recommendations. Mr. Barry Blevins, good morning, sir. There he is.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you so much for allowing us to discuss this. And so I want to introduce Ms. Shelby Powell. She's the Deputy Director of Campo and very versed and been instrumental in helping get this transit study done. We're near the end, and so she will talk more about it and tell you what we were asking you all to do for us. Thank you, Shelby.
Yes, thank you, Barry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission for having me today. I'm Shelby Powell with the Capital Area MPO. And just as a reminder of who the Capital Area MPO is, Harnett County has been a member since about 2005 after the urbanized area expansion from the 2000 census. And then on this map, you can see the pink area in Harnett County. That was our recent boundary expansion that happened in 2023. So we went down into Lillington and Coates as well. The entirety of the MPO is about a 1.4 million population, and it's all or parts of Wake County, Chatham, Franklin, Granville, Harnett, and Johnston. So a couple of years ago, Harnett County approached the MPO and asked for some assistance in being more forward-thinking about what public transportation could look like here in the county. We did contract with a consultant, WSP, to do a study. We spent the first part of the study evaluating travel patterns here in the county, looking at where people are coming and going to and from, educating the public about the different public transportation options that exist in the world. It's not just, buses or trains. There's a variety of other public transportation options that are out there. And talking with them about their needs or the perceived desire for public transportation here in the county. And then also looking at the demand layered on top of that desire. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And just to recap, we did start this study back in 2023, and so we've gone through several rounds of public engagement. We've gone through several rounds of analysis. We've had quite a few core technical team meetings and some stakeholder meetings and focus group meetings to get us to this point where we're presenting recommendations to you today. So when we talk about transit supportiveness, there's quite a few pieces of data that we look at for that. Here are some of those pieces of data. So we started with the HARTS ridership. We understand the HARTS program, which is a very well-run and well-respected program, but they're reaching capacity with what they can do and the number of trips they can provide and the types of trips they can provide. But we did want to start with where their high-demand areas were. Then we looked at some of your population density. The higher level, if you will, of public transportation is dependent on the higher levels of population density. So I know that's one of the things you all have been exploring through your recent comprehensive plan, looking at additional areas in the county where you can target some of this growth and development. So we did want to look at where this population density is and where we're intending for it to be as a county in the future. Then we looked at trips, what we called intrazonal trips, so the trips that were being made within these different traffic analysis zones that we have in the county. And right below that, you see interzonal trips, so where people are traveling to and from in the study area. And just to reiterate, our study area was the entirety of the Campo boundary within Harnett County. So that's what we used as our study area because that's what we're authorized to study. So we looked at both the trips that were happening, relatively short trips within those zones, and then the trips that were happening between those zones within the study area. Then we looked at some income and socioeconomic data, which lends itself to transit propensity as well. Obviously, folks that have fewer choices of how to get around places are going to be higher transit users. And then we looked at your future land use, again, referring back to your comprehensive plan and some of the local plans that are happening in the municipalities as well. Oh, I see I was supposed to be clicking through here. But as you can see, within the study area, all of these things kind of coalesce around this central core area between Anger, Lillington, and Coates, which I don't think is surprising, and then leading up to the Wake County line as well. So when we were looking at trip distribution, we wanted to see where people were going and where they were coming from. So using a big data source software called Replica that I believe works with cell phone data, tracking where people are coming and going. not on a personal level, but on an aggregate level. And removing those trips where people were going home, because if you live here in the study area, all of your trips are typically going to end with you going back home. So we wanted to remove those. And then hotel and airport trips are kind of one-off trips as well. So those were removed. We wanted to look at where people were consistently traveling within the study area. And what we found was that in the study area, there on this one particular day, we just picked a random Thursday where school was in session and it was a nice day. It wasn't rainy. It was a typical travel day, if you will. So we found that on that day, there were 136,800 trips happening within the study area, either starting, ending, or within the study area. And the ones that started within the study area, there was 104,000 of those, and the ones ending in the study area, there were 88,600 of those. So we looked, the list of numbers here at the bottom is external to internal. So the external trips that started outside of the study area, it could have been within Harnett County or outside of Harnett County and some of the neighboring counties, but the trips coming within the study area from outside on that day, there were 32,700 of them, which is 24% of the total. The internal to external, so they started within the study area and left the study area, that was 35% of the trips. And then the internal to internal, which means they stayed within the study area for their full trip, that was 41%, or 55,700 trips. So that's a pretty equal distribution of trips that were both within the study area, coming into and leaving the study area. So with all this in mind, we went out and wanted to talk to the public a little bit more. The whole first 6 or 7 months of this study was focused on public engagement and education. We heard, if you can see the bar chart here, the orange and blue on the far left side are the very interested in public transportation or somewhat interested. So that's a little over 50% of the people we talked to or that filled out the survey were somewhat or very interested in exploring additional public transportation options for Harnett County. We used a variety of methods to reach these folks. We had a website. We did a lot of social media. We also did some focus groups, and you may have seen our staff around the county at different pop-up events at your festivals and senior centers and things like that. We asked people if they had public transportation options, where would they want to go? And this is the map that was produced out of that effort. So you can see, again, if you look at the central part of that study area, coming down from Wake County, centering in Lillington, and going east to Anger and to Coates, you can see the distribution there is pretty centered in those areas. So using all of that, we decided to explore 4 different types of transportation or public transportation that might work with this type of environment. We looked at microtransit, which is becoming a lot more popular across North Carolina and across the nation. It can operate in a variety of ways. Spoiler alert, that ends up being our recommendation here at the end. But that can be delivered in a variety of different models, and we'll get into that in a little bit. We also looked at fixed route service, which is what you think of as a typical bus route. So getting on a bus at a stop, getting off the bus at the next stop or another stop at designated stops. We looked at a senior shuttle model. This was an idea that came from Durham County. They have a senior shuttle service that operates from different senior housing facilities on different days of the week. That's a really targeted audience. So I think the outcome of exploring that particular option was that it wasn't serving enough of the population that needed to be served. There was no work trips involved there. But that could be something to look at layering on in the future as well. And then we looked at regional routes, which were intended more for work trips, focused on work trips, to connect the folks living within the study area to some of those transit services that exist outside of the study area, and just plugging in primarily to the Wake County transportation system for public transportation. So I know this is a little hard to see. We will have a report coming out where you can have bigger pictures of this. But what we found, again, when layering all the data on, layering all the places people wanted to go, all the places that we found they were traveling to and from within the study area, it really started to converge in this centralized area that's highlighted there in dark blue on the right. So it does, just getting into some of those initial maps that we looked at, it does cover the big hotspot areas of the HARTS ridership as it currently exists, and it covers a lot of those travel zones that we saw where transit propensity existed in the populations living there. So when we knew we were going to recommend a microtransit solution centered on that area, we wanted to go out and talk with the public about that and kind of follow back up and, you know, tell them we heard from you that you want to take these types of trips, you want to go to these types of places, this is the solution we're recommending, what do you think of that? And we had about 154 survey respondents on our online survey. In April, again, you may have seen the Campo staff around at several events out in the community talking with people. We had that website again and some outreach and promotion. And we also really want to thank the Harnett County staff. Nobody that lives here knows who Campo is. And we're comfortable with that. But we do rely a lot on your local staff to help us get the word out. And I know Desiree and Jay and Coley and Barry and Chance, all your staff were just really helpful in helping us to reach the public and be able to talk with them and set up events and help us get tables at certain events and things like that. So we really were able to blanket the community with information, and we found that to be very helpful in validating our recommendations. So again, these are some of the events that we were out at, primarily in April, just last month. We had things at the Anger Chamber of Commerce community yard sale. We were out at Campbell University at the Student Union to talk with students there and staff. We were out at an apartment complex in Lillington, so just a variety of ways to try to reach people. We also put some of those real ad kind of small videos on Facebook and Google and paid for some targeted advertising within the study area, and then also did some publication in the Daily Record as well. We did produce for you all this brochure, which is not tied to a point in time, so it can be used if you all do want to run forward with a microtransit implementation here in the county. This is a good brochure just telling people what that is and how it works and how it could benefit the community and answers some of the questions that we got during the public engagement phases. So at the end of the public engagement phase number 2, where we were asking people if they thought this was a good solution that met the needs that they had expressed to us, we found that 69% of the people thought this was a good solution, and 20% said, well, we don't know, we still need some more information, we're not really sure how it would work, and only 11% said that they did not feel like this was a good solution. We had several opportunities, both at our public events and at our online survey, to have some open questions. We knew you all would want to know what the questions of the people were as you think further about implementing this. And we also wanted to make sure that our documentation was covering the questions that were out there in the community. So when we asked them if they had questions or comments about this microtransit recommendation with the regional connections overall, we got some questions about, will it be handicap accessible? How can seniors access this if they don't have a smartphone or if the internet's not available? How will it connect to those regional services? And then a lot of questions about why the study area was bounded the way that it was. So we put out a frequently asked questions on the website and tried to answer some of those questions. We also got questions about safety. How is this going to be a safe service? That's obviously top in everyone's mind. And with this being a publicly funded service, there would be, driver training. There would be uniformed drivers. It would feel a little safer and more stable and secure than, say, an Uber or a Lyft, where somebody from your app is showing up and you have no idea who they might be. We also got some questions about people getting stranded. So if there's a time limit on when the service is being offered and you take me to work and I get off work after the service is over, how are you going to work that? That's one of the things that would need to be planned for during an implementation phase, obviously. We would recommend that, especially those regional trips that are plugging into those fixed route services in Wake County, if people, want to take this service up to the bus in Holly Springs or Fuquay or Wake Tech, you would want your service to run at least as late as the last bus getting to those places so that you are able to make those connections home. And you can also do things with technology like remind people, hey, the service is ending, at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever. Make sure you schedule your ride home before that. And there were questions on how this could run simultaneously with HARTS. Is this taking the place of HARTS? Is this in addition to HARTS? And just how those things work together. And what we're recommending is that we do a pilot system through HARTS and utilize some of that equipment just in a different way that looks at microtransit through a software service and start scheduling trips that way and just kind of see how it works and see if it's something that would make sense to you all to invest additional resources in the long term. So we also just asked broadly, what else do you want to know? What else are you concerned about? There was some concern about the rest of the county, obviously, particularly when we're out at community events where people from outside the study area are coming into those events. And it's our understanding that the Fayetteville MPO, which covers the southern half of the county, is embarking on a similar study. We have shared our scope with them that we used for this study. So I'm hopeful that there will be some similar exploration and analysis there. And obviously, we're happy to work with them as they embark on that study in the southern part of the county. And people asked, why did we do the study? And I think it's pretty obvious to anyone who looks around in Harnett County that it's growing like crazy. I think you all are doing a good job wrangling some of that growth and figuring out through your comprehensive plan how to target that growth, how to shape that growth. And I think the being forward thinking about how public transportation could serve that growth was a good idea and is going to help you get ahead of some of the issues that are going to come with the mobility challenges of increased urbanization. There was questions about if the service could expand beyond what we're recommending as the service area, and I think the question to that is yes. Again, we didn't look at the areas of the county outside of Harnett County, so outside of the Campo boundary in the southern part of the county, so we can't speak to, we didn't do the analysis of the land use or the density or the socioeconomic factors in that part of the county. If those things match up to the reasons why the study area was put where it was in this recommendation, then I think that makes sense to expand it. I think you'll know a lot more after the Fayetteville MPO finishes studying that part of the county. And then how will scheduling work and will there be long wait times? That's, again, something that's going to depend on the number of vehicles that you have devoted to the service. It's going to depend on how the word gets out about the service, the usage of the service, and how the services actually operate, and where the trips end up going. We're modeling some things and we have some good guesses on how we think it'll be used, but once you really put the wheels on the ground, so to speak, you're going to really see how people are using this service and if, people are primarily using it for school or for work, or if they're using it all times of day for shopping trips or other kind of leisure activities. I think you'll be able to better shape how you're delivering the service in order to meet those actual trip needs. So we had a lot of positive comments. Again, people liked the idea of providing transportation options to people who may not have cars or may not be able to drive anymore, or we've got comments on those with a criminal history, to the point that was made during the last presentation, being able to need public transportation options. We also thought that we got people that thought that was a good alternative to the HARTS service when they've been unable to provide trips. This might be able to expand the service options that are available to folks in the county. We also, of course, got some critical comments. It was not met with all flowers and rainbows, although largely it was. But there was comments about, using the funding to make better road improvements, using the funding to fix the HART system first, so expanding hours of operation for HARTs instead of funding an additional service, and some concerns about how this might work, how this might be scalable as the county does grow, and concerns about longer wait times and people not being able to actually access the service even though it is being publicly paid for. We got some questions, of course, that we couldn't answer with the level of detail that we got into with this study. How will the service be implemented after the study, and how long, basically when can we ride it? That's more up to you all than it is up to us. How will it be funded, and what will be the local obligation to that? We did get into a little bit of costing in our implementation plan. So just depending on the method that you all use to deploy a service like this, that's really going to drive what the cost looks like. What will be the operating hours? How many vehicles will there be? Those are all things that really, if this was something that you decided to move forward with, you would want to do a detailed implementation study to figure out how to deploy it and what makes sense from both an operational and capital perspective as well as a timing perspective. I have this here in case you all have any questions at this point of additional things that we may not have heard as questions, or other concerns or comments that you have at this point. And I do have a little bit more information to share.
Outstanding so far. I know that Commissioner McCoy and I had this brought up as a concern at our town hall last week about public transportation. So I look forward to seeing FAMPOs as well. And you're right. When we talked about Campo and FAMPO, people were like, what is that?
Right,
So,
right.
But I'll say if and there's no other questions or comments, I were to continue.
Okay. So just getting down into some of the details of the recommendation, we're looking at this service area that's here highlighted in the dark dashed line around the center of our study area. That would be your proposed service area. So all of that service area would be serviceable by the microtransit service. And then we have these kind of purplish squares on the outside of that study area. So you could start or end a trip on the microtransit service within that dotted line area and go to or from one of those external points as well. We thought it would be too costly to extend the entire service area. You get into a lot of kind of rural community. It doesn't make a lot of sense to be driving broad, wide distances. That's really going to cut down on the number of trips you're able to offer and the time that those trips are going to take. So by having those targeted destinations or origin points outside of the study area that are really tied to the places people told us they want to go, and that there's evidence that those trips are being made consistently now, we felt like this was a good scale of approach to start. We also recommend, as I mentioned before, something called software as a service. So you would have a technology that you could get to on your phone or on the internet. And just given the number of questions we got about people who may not be familiar with that kind of technology or may not have access to the internet, we would also encourage you all to consider a call center that is also staffed to take calls and take reservations that way as well. So again, we're recommending for at least a pilot program for HARTs to operate the service, make use of existing staff and vehicles, and this would just be kind of a different way of business. I think some additional implementation discussion would need to happen as to how that impacts current services, how you transition over to this without disrupting the current service that's being provided. And then figuring out, there's a number of these software vendors that exist out there in the world. Figuring out which ones are appropriate for you all and that meet your needs would be important. So we would, again, recommend a span of service that starts with the existing hours of operation that you already have. People are used to being able to access trips that way. But I would also encourage you to look at the operating hours of the places that you're trying to serve. Obviously, if you're serving like a 24-hour Walmart, you don't necessarily want to have shuttles available at 3 a.m. for people to run to Walmart on a one-off. But looking, as late into the night as you think people need in order to access the trips that they need to access, as well as accessing those other public transportation services in Wake County that have some fixed time points as well. You want to target having wait times from 15 to 30 minutes. That allows people to have some flexibility with scheduling the trips and not have to wait too long. Getting up towards 30 minutes is bordering on inconvenient, but the closer you can get to 15, again, that depends on the number of vehicles that you have and the number of staff that you have to operate those vehicles. We talked about trip booking through an app, but also considering a call center or a website where you could schedule trips as well. And then looking at the fare structure, you would need to consider a fare structure that makes sense with the amount of service that you're providing. We found that similar services in North Carolina are around $6 a ride each way. So again, that's going to depend on if you want to have dynamic pricing based on distance, or if you want to have fixed pricing based on maybe a time of day. It's more expensive at a busier time of day, or you pay more for less of a wait, things like that. Those are the kind of things that you would look at in some detailed implementation planning to strategize around on what type of service you want to deliver. So looking at funding, obviously none of this is free. So there is some funding across the state for doing pilot programs like this, but we do find that local and county funding sources are funding a large part of this. This is a service to your communities and to your residents and helping them to get around. So finding a sustainable local funding source is important in order to keep the service going. But there are opportunities out there for getting pilot funding to try it out. That's actually what we did in northeastern Wake County. There's a microtransit service that we did a pilot using federal funds in, if you're familiar with the area north of Knightdale and in Rollsville, kind of in that northeastern corner of Wake County. And the service was so successful that they then came to the county transit tax. There's a sales tax dedicated to public transportation in Wake County. They're now using part of that sales tax money to fund that service. They were able to better shape their service area and the number of vehicles that they're using, but it is operated through the county as a microtransit service, and it does connect folks in that area to employment opportunities in other parts of Wake County, as well as to some of those fixed route services. So just for that pilot program, if you are able to utilize existing vehicles that you already have through HARTS, that obviously keeps some of your costs down. There would be a fee associated with implementing any technology, and estimated operating costs. They're just a very general idea of cost here. If you're looking at 3, 4, or 5 vehicles to serve this, you're looking at total annual operating costs anywhere from $500,000 to almost $1 million a year. Breaking that down per household or per person, our core technical team asked us to look a little further into this cost and what it actually means on a per person basis. So we also wanted to just provide you with an idea of what those numbers look like on a per household or per person basis using the number of households and people in that study area. So what we're recommending as far as phased implementation is kind of a pre-pilot. So again, doing some of that implementation planning. What I would actually recommend is after the Fayetteville area MPO, if that study is coming sooner rather than later. It's my understanding they're trying to do it in the next fiscal year. After that study is done, the CAMPO and FAMPO could work together on a joint implementation study and figure out where those overlapping recommendations are and give you more guidance on a preferred method of delivery for this kind of thing. That is, a year or so away, depending on what their study schedule looks like. But just for efficiencies purposes and not to jump into something without really fully understanding outside implications, that might be a good idea or might be something to consider. We do joint studies with neighboring MPOs all the time, so it's not an unusual request for us. So after doing some of that pre-work to set yourselves up for how this might work, looking at what you would consider to be your key performance indicators, how are you going to measure whether this is successful or not? How are you going to measure whether this is something you want to continue funding or not? Getting all of those kind of ducks in a row before jumping in and starting a service would be important, laying that good foundation so that you really understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and who you're trying to serve. And then doing a pilot implementation. That could be a 1-year pilot, it could be an 18-month pilot. Figuring out how you're going to market that and who you're going to target with that would obviously be important and would help determine how successful your pilot program is going to be. And then after the pilot program, look at how you might transition that into something that's more sustainable, funded locally. If you wanted to purchase additional vehicles, if it's so successful that you see you would be a benefit to increase the number of vehicles that you have dedicated to this. If you learn some things that may change how you're measuring success, those type of reiterative kind of exploration would continue to happen as you go forward with implementing this. So we're almost done with this study. Our consultant contract actually ends in June. We're finishing up all the final documentation, all the written reports. Those will be posted to our website. Some of them are already, there's a lot of technical memos over a lot of the information that I've covered today that are already posted on our website. This presentation, or something similar to it, is posted on the website. We would ask for you all to consider endorsing the idea of the study, not raising your hand and saying, we'll pay for this starting tomorrow. But we generally just want to know that you all are comfortable with the recommendations that are moving forward before we take them to the full MPO board for their endorsement. So just a kind of recap, reminder of some of the benefits, opportunities, and challenges with a service like this. The benefits, obviously increased accessibilities, particularly in rural and low-density areas. There are still a lot of those within that targeted study area or targeted service area that we're recommending, but really looking at shaping your growth around being able to provide some of these services will continue to be important. This could offer curb-to-curb service. You're not asking people to go to a bus stop, which could be prohibitive to people with mobility challenges. There seems to be support across the county for people that we talk to, general support and excitement. We have seen successful implementation of this in other counties that are in similar growth situations that Harnett County is in, so we do think there's opportunity for success here. And you can implement it in a variety of ways where it's flexible and convenient for the people that you want to be using it. You can help increase your regional connectivity, particularly when you think about folks that you have traveling up to Wake County for work purposes or for medical purposes. Plugging the people in northern Harnett County into the fixed route services that already exist to access those places would be good, and would also give people an option to help take some of the traffic traveling those same directions off the road. And then generating data on those travel patterns. You'll get to see where people are traveling. You'll have a log of where people are coming and going, much like you do with HARTS now. But that can help shape some of the future services and help explore what other public transportation options you might want to offer in the future. And then, of course, there's challenges with implementing something like this. Funding being the number one, figuring out how you're going to fund it, at what level you want to fund it. There's been a problem across the state, across the nation really, with bus operator retention. That's a challenge that I think is slowly starting to turn around, but still has a little ways to go from what I understand, but wanted to recognize that's a challenge as well. And depending on what type of vehicles that you're offering this service through, special licensing may not be necessary, but you do still want to make sure that you have trained drivers able to provide the service that you're trying to provide. There's a variety of different governance and cost-sharing mechanisms that you could explore across the county. That's something else that I would recommend looking at through an implementation study. And then, of course, there's the needs outside of this study area and what that looks like. again, we're hopeful that the Fayetteville area MPO study is going to help us figure out some of the answers to those and give us a better idea on what might be best to move forward. So this is just the cheerleading pitch here, that we do think this is a good idea for you all. It does seem like a service that would work. We do recommend that you advance to an implementation study phase, again, either waiting till the Fayetteville area MPO finishes studying the balance of the county, or if you wanted to move forward with a more detailed implementation strategy, obviously the MPO is available to help with that kind of work. And then just we're seeing a lot of interest in having these transportation options, and we think it's a good time for you all to be looking at this and really getting ahead of that curve. And that's all I have. And I'm happy to take any other questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. I have a question, and I'll put you on the spot here. Is there any funding available through CAMPO?
We do not do operational funding. We're a planning organization, so we only have planning funding.
I have a question. Is there any matching funding from the state for us? Because it is certainly a need here in Harnett County. And then I'm a question, HOTS has his hands full now, trying to keep staff with the number of vehicles that they have now. So I don't know, I think Barry would have to be the one to say if he could take this on. It's much needed now. But organizing it and getting it set up, especially for the senior citizens in this county, is something to think about.
Yeah, and that's some of the things that I think would need to be addressed more directly through an implementation strategy study. As far as state matching, we have seen a couple of counties that use their county funding for transit on services like this to expand their offerings. What Barry and I talked about a little bit at the conclusion meeting of this study was doing some kind of peer exchange with some of those people who have implemented this and maybe getting some lessons learned and talking with them about how they have funded it. In Wake County, which is the most direct neighbor here that's obviously got a public transportation sales tax that exists. That's an option that you all could put in place to help fund some of this. Johnston County is funding it other ways. They've received some state funding to do their pilot program in the Smithfield area. And I think they're using some of their state-directed transportation funds or federal-directed rural transportation funds to continue exploring how their microtransit service works. So I think there would be some benefit in doing that kind of peer exchange and talking with other people about the different funding strategies and governance strategies and how they've delivered this and how that might apply to you all.
Grant. Do we have any kind of funding in this county that we could even start considering this?
Actually, we don't, but I actually attended a grant program on Thursday last week from Golden Leaf. And they have what is called Community-Based Grant Initiative that is starting for our region, and there'll be more information coming out about that, but it is a potential grant source that we can use to help with the initial purchase of vehicles and a little bit of the operational costs. The ongoing operational costs we'll have to budget for, but part of it is we're receiving a little bit of money for the cost of the ride from each of the individuals that utilize it, putting in some money of ours from our general fund. We probably could work as part of the implementation study, figuring out what our contribution would need to be in order to get it going. But being able to purchase the vehicles that are more useful for this type of thing. Way back in another small town, we actually had microtransit. We had a minivan that was handicap accessible that ran all over town, giving individuals a ride to the grocery store or wherever they needed to go, almost like a taxi. And it was used constantly all day long by our residents. And so this is in a grander scale to that, but it is something that I think there's a need for, especially since in this area there's very little Lyft or Uber service. And so that makes it something that there's a demand for, but we don't have anybody providing the service. So I think it's definitely something to consider for our county in the future, and I think not just the northern part of the county, but the southern part as well.
Thank you. Barry. How would something like this fit into your service? I know you're strapped now with trying to keep
Overall, we would just blend it in if we were doing it. And a couple of, you talked about, or asked about funding, and I think Shelby talked about it a little bit. Well, we can leverage certain road funds to help subsidize the cost to the county, as we do now. So really it would be just an additional service besides what we offer now. And the different service is more responsive. So it is true, though. We all have problems hiring people. We do have existing inventory that we could use, vehicles, but we know we'd have to plus up on drivers for sure. So, and then there's the cost of the software, which is, I got an estimate just to see how much it costs. We're using our existing software to add on to it was, I think it was $55,000 just to add it in, and that was for 2 vehicles. So the software costs are exorbitant.
Would you need more vehicles?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we think, so if you think about it like this, how I view it is that you're actually subsidizing your system already. So some of those same people we pick up now, we could use that portion of the inventory we have. But again, I think additional implementation study is warranted because if the board wishes to introduce microtransit, we don't want to fail. So if you come out the door and you fail, then you'll never bring it back. But on the opposite end, if you introduce a success, there's no going back. So it's like opening the Pandora's box.
Thank you.
And I did want to, just Barry talking about the cost of that software made me think, so while the MPO is a planning organization, we do have our locally administered projects program, our LAP program. You all have received some funding through that for roadway projects and greenway projects or bicycle and pedestrian projects. We do have some transit funding available in there for capital type of expenses. We wouldn't be able to pay for long-term operations, but some of those, like the software, I'd have to look into the eligibility of our funding sources to be able to apply it to something like the software. But we do have a transit kind of slice of our pie of the LAP program, so there could be some opportunity there. And that's an 80-20 match program.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Pleasure of the board.
Is it going to be better to wait to the Fayetteville MPO gets their study in?
I know they're working on theirs like now, so. Yeah, but I mean, we're not looking at getting that back to the end of the year, I would say.
And what the MPO will do with your endorsement is we have what's called our long-range metropolitan transportation plan, which is the list of transportation projects and programs that we anticipate having over the next 30 years in our planning area. We would use this as a consideration for additional planning in our MTP. So just looking at how we might leverage a microtransit service in this area for other public transportation as we consider that more long-range planning. So we always ask our board with these type of studies, whether it's a corridor study or this type of more operational study, to endorse this for use in MTP planning, Metropolitan Transportation Plan planning. So if you all are comfortable with the recommendations being used in that way, that's the kind of endorsement that we're looking for.
I would say I would be in favor of endorsing this, and then next meeting to endorse it.
Yes, I would say we put this on the agenda to consider endorsing at the next meeting.
I would consider endorsing it at our next meeting, but I need to know if Brent, you as the manager, how do you feel about us taking this on? It's much needed in this county, there's no doubt about that.
I think endorsing it is the right step to take, and that just prepares us for the future for the next steps that we need. I think the information from the study is very clear that this is something that is desired by the public, would fit a need that's there in the public, and so endorsing it just takes us to the steps to ensure finding a pragmatic way to implement.
Well, I will make a motion that we endorse.
If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and add this to the consent agenda next week.
Good with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discuss motive care transportation. Mr. Blevins, you're up again, sir.
Transportation. So first of all, I'd like to thank Shelby for coming up today and doing a presentation, and Campo for their support, and of course the board for having the vision to start this study. So it's good that we're transportation. Hearts is really engaged with Campo and FAMPO to try to increase our footprint in a productive way that makes sense. So, and we need those planning organizations to help us with that. So on the motive care, so let me discuss motive care. So let me start at the beginning and say that motive care is an non-emergency medical transportation broker. The reason we're bringing it to the board is seeking your guidance as we begin a negotiation with the company that provides that, and I'll explain more in detail. The reason why we even were interested in having discussions with Motive Care was because Motive Care has been operating in the county, well, let's say NEMT has been operating in the county since 21, the Medicaid transformation. And there was a large group of people that were receiving Medicaid that moved from DSS providing transportation through Hearts to NEMT brokers. We did not want to get involved to begin with because we were still receiving good revenue from Medicaid providers. We were getting the new NEMT providers were struggling to work with transit systems, and we watched it progress and watched other systems make mistakes, lose money, very negative feedback. But now they have, since then now, they have really started getting into the groove of the transportation system. And I'll explain a little bit more of that. But more importantly is that when the final, well, it's not actually the final, but the actual last move in July of a majority of Medicaid recipients in this county that were using Hearts were moved to NEMT brokers, we started getting complaints that they wanted us to be one of their providers because, and I'm not saying the whole program's this way, but people would show up because they had scheduled a transportation and they wouldn't be in uniforms, they would just be in cars, knocking on their door and providing transportation. And you can imagine if you're a single senior person and somebody just shows up with no ID, nothing of that sort, it's probably very intimidating. The other thing was when we reached out to Motive Care and started having discussions with them, they indicated there's not enough ADA lift vehicles in the county, that we have all the lift vehicles. So there's not a lot of providers to the brokers who invest money in lift vehicles, which, as you know, they could be over $100,000. So we've seen a need. And so we started to at least have discussions with Motive Care. And so let me give you some of the background. So again, I'm talking about the Medicaid transportation that started in July 21. That was directed by DHHS. As you know, it's called managed care. So managed care produced NEMT providers, which are brokers. Right now, there's two in the state, Motive Care and WellCare, which is MTM, if I'm correct, MTM. And Motive Care does more business in Harnett County than the other one does. Motive Care seems to be knows how to manage their program well, with WellCare is kind of falling behind. And the reason we know this is we meet every month with each provider, each broker, through the NCPTA, the Public Transit Association, and we have discussions. You know, almost every transit system in North Carolina gets on the call, and you can see the questions asked, who's better organized, and Motive Care is better organized. So, and the other one's coming along, but they don't have a big footprint in Harnett County. So but going back to that July 21, across the state, 1.6 million people of 2.3 million transitioned to the brokers. So that was a lot of people across the state. In 24, of July 24, the last is called the Standard and Tailored Medicaid Plans Transition. Then local DSS, unless they meet certain conditions, we're no longer scheduling transportation. So it dropped for us, not really a lot, and I'll explain that, but it dropped some for us, and that's where we got all the questions, to help people, citizens that wish to have transportation. Again, Harts was approached several times during that transition from 21 to now. We watched it, and we just thought that they didn't have a good handle on what was going on, so we would just stand on the sidelines until they got it all fixed. And we were still receiving Medicaid revenue to help pay for the system. And it still does. Although, again, Motive Care, out of 68 systems, Motive Care is working with 38 transit systems across the state. They're the largest broker in Harnett County. Again, we received those requests, and then again, Motive Care indicated there was not enough ADA vehicles in Harnett County that they had to turn down rides. So let me talk a little bit how this works. So a recipient of Medicaid calls Motive Care, if that's their assigned NEMT provider. They call them up, say, I got a medical treatment on 25th of May. They can go really far out. So they hold that and look for people that'll provide that transportation. DHS, when this first started through the transition, managed care, having broker transportation, indicated they wanted their transit systems to get the first call. So what they do is they call transit systems that have a contract with them and say, can you take this transportation? They have to give you a 48-hour notice, just like we do now, but we get the opportunity to look at it if the contract was approved, to either take the trip or turn it down and give it to private individuals. So the brokerage would turn around and give it to the private. And so our discussions was worrying that we would take business for people, and be frowned upon for doing it. So, but what they're saying told us there's more business in Harnett County and you're going to turn some down, and there's plenty of business to go around. So that was their take. So anyway, what you do if you don't want to schedule it, you just turn it back and they divvy it out to somebody else. But if you do take it, then it's treated just like any other transportation we do. You take them there. The difference is normally you may drop a person off and then another provider could bring them back. But for us, especially if it's out of county, we would insist on staying there and taking that same person home. And I think it's available through the contract. And again, this is what we're negotiating right now. How they base their rates and they pay us, they pay you from 0 to 3 miles, one rate, from 4 to 6, another rate, from 7 above, another rate. You get paid a certain rate if you're sharing a ride with somebody else that has any of the brokers. So if you have 2 Medicaid recipients in there riding, then you kind of share that trip. But that's the way we do anyway. That's how we're all counted when we transport people. It's called shared rides. But the point being is that it does pay. We've looked at the number. We know what our cost per trip is. So the numbers they're giving us right now are fairly reasonable. I mean, they're not like we're providing transportation for free. We would make a little bit of money to ensure that we're providing that service. And we wouldn't go, I don't think we'd go broke doing it. And if we did, the one thing we could do, each contract is only a year long. So if you don't take the trip, you don't take the trip, or if you want to bow out after a year, you bow out.
Mr. Butler,
Yes, sir.
is this all local runs or
It's,
just trips to Chapel Hill and Raleigh and everywhere?
yes. So it could be out of county. It wouldn't be across the state, but it could be out of county.
That's what comes to mind is the taxi services in Morehead City and Wilmington hauling folks to Chapel Hill and staying up there waiting all day.
Right,
And
right.
I was wondering if this is that level or is it just a go and drop or?
So right now, and Chance could speak more on it, but what we do is we take people to, let's say Chapel Hill. We drop a patient off that has Medicaid, and that's normally what we use. We drop them off, and then we're riding around that area picking people up or dropping them off. So you still treat it as a transit system. You don't treat it as an Uber. So you're still taking other transit. That's what you say. That's the reason why we say if you can't fit in our schedule, you turn it down. But right now, that's what we do. We don't sit around and wait. We may wait 10 or 15 minutes if we know they're coming out because we know their appointment times. But while we're waiting, we also go around and pick other people up and drop them off and do the same thing in that area.
In the Chapel, so if you drop one at UNC.
Right.
The driver's gonna work other short trips around UNC.
That's correct.
Before he picks his person up and brings them back to Harney County.
That's correct. That's how we work now, and that's how we work with this.
How many, excuse me, I'm sorry. Finish,
Ma'am?
finish.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Okay.
How many of these motor care, cars and all, because I know some of them, how many of those that we have here in the state, in Harney County? Do you know?
How many trips originate here?
Right.
The numbers I've seen are about 1,700 a month, or 1,700 a month.
17 a month? You don't know how many drivers we have in this county?
I do not. I don't have that information. They won't provide it. But it's averaging pretty high for origination. I didn't give the numbers for returns, but the originating was what we were interested in, was 1,700, 1,800 a month.
And that doesn't interfere with what Harts is doing then, right?
Mhm.
It's just because when I first got elected, I remember us having contractors out there
We did.
doing the same thing, but we don't have any contractors out there now.
We do not.
So it actually, this motor care is coming from the state. The state is providing.
Yes, they have a contract with the state.
Okay. Well, I guess it's needed. I mean, we have a large quantity of senior citizens here. And that is a benefit that I think is greatly appreciated because with Representative Nichols last week out there in the western part of the county, they were complaining. But they were complaining because they didn't have adequate information about what Harts provide and how they could get assistance from elsewhere. I think we kind of explained it, but I still don't know that they truly understand it. How much educational material you put out for Harts? Well, I think it's a wonderful program, and I do know, by sitting on the Sandhill board for a number of years, that not all counties provide this kind of benefit for the seniors. And I'm
That's
very
correct.
pleased that Harney County is one of the counties that do provide this benefit for senior citizens.
Well, so how we advertise, every year we do advertisement through radio. I think are we in the middle of one now? Yeah. So we do it that way. We give handouts. We go to senior centers. Anywhere that people listen to us, we go out and talk to them. And I mean, I don't know how else to do it as that, but there's other ways we can market it. And it goes back to the whole microtransit. If you even consider that, you've got to market that. So, You're right, there are a lot of people in the western part of the county don't know much about Harts. That is a fact. We do pick a lot of people up, and in fact, we essentially almost have a fixed route that runs through Anderson Creek, 87, Buffalo Lakes. I mean, it's almost a fixed route because you run it every day.
I know, but I just want to add to my questions and all and suggest that, maybe there's some kind of way. I know one time in the county, we were doing flyers, doing a newsletter or flyers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they had someone to deliver them out there to the stores and those shopping areas in the western part of the county where people could pick up the education and know what to do and when they have the need for that. Do you think that's something that we could consider doing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's right. I'm writing a note on it right now because you're right. I think places we could put it at on 87 and some of those shopping centers and move that forward. I'm sure of that. So
I think that would be helpful because I know when Paula was here, she certainly took that under consideration and she did that.
I think
Desiree do a good job in communication. I got to give her that. But not all people, especially senior citizens, have computers and they can tap in onto that kind of stuff.
that was a good question, and we'll figure out that how to do on a special in the western portion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are you just doing well?
Yeah.
I have one more question. Who's responsible for vetting drivers? Individual companies, or does our people do it, or?
So, you mean the private companies?
What I want to know is what are we going to do to prevent some convicted felon who's been charged with assault or a sexual offense or something from becoming a driver to haul these people?
So we vet every employee that comes through, and so we have that record check.
Okay, so you handle.
So they would be employees of Harts.
Yeah.
Under this.
That's fine, as long as you tell me you're handling it.
Right.
That's all.
And I will say the private companies, they do the same thing because they're required to do everything that we do, to meet the FDA's requirements. So.
And that goes for insurance for them.
Absolutely.
For other types of actions. The quality of the vehicle that they're using has to meet certain standards. There are things that the state government requires a Motive Care to do for all of the companies that they're contracting with. And then Motive Care makes the decision as to which company gets assigned that ride. So as we look at even some of our local companies that we have that can do this kind of service, it ends up being up to Motive Care as to who gets assigned for that particular pickup. And so we don't have any control over that. If we turn a ride back to Motive Care decides which company to assign that pickup for. And so that's something that has been a concern. We have some local companies that we would like to see get more business, but ultimately we can't force Motive Care's hand in that regard.
And going back to the checks, Motive Care does audits throughout the year. The contracts are a year long, so throughout the year they do audits.
And that's fine, as long as somebody's checking them.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to see.
Yep.
What would you like to see from the board?
Any guidance, and then we'll move forward and continue negotiating with them. And I know Legal's had their first review, may have some changes on the legal language, and the company's out of Georgia, so it's back with their legal team. Once that's finished, we'll finish up the negotiation on how much we'd like to charge, and see if we can't move some away from some of their numbers. And then we'll be executing it after the board approves it, if you so desire.
I think we should
Continue to
continue. I think we should
doing what you're
continue to, but this is a benefit that is greatly needed in this county, especially when we don't have any other kind of transportation for the citizens here. But to me, I have a passion for senior citizens because I'm one.
I'm one too, I just hate admitting it. I said, I'm one too, but I hate admitting it.
I'm gonna admit it myself because you can look at me and tell.
You know what I'm doing? I'm trying to set everything up for hearts. So when I have to use them, they're going to be riding right.
All right, then, I appreciate that.
Pleasure of the board to go ahead and give direction to let them continue their process. Thank you very much, sir. And you are up one more time. Discuss a request to hold a public hearing and consider the approval for FY27 administrative grant application.
Well, we don't require a public meeting for this. This is the pre-application, but we do need those pre-application for our normal funding for 5311 every year. DOT's broke it down in two different postures now. They do a pre-application, all the documents have to be signed, and then we apply for it, and that's when you have the public hearing in October.
So
September, October.
You apply.
That's when you actually apply. So the first bundle is if the board approves us apply the pre-application, then all the documents get signed, they put it aside, they ensure everything's done, and then we can apply for the funds for fiscal year 27.
Pleasure of the board to add this consent agenda. Go ahead and add this to the consent agenda next week for approval.
I want to say this to you, Barry. I give you a fit sometime, but I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, we got a lot of conglomerate stuff. But we enjoy it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Discuss a request for approval to enter into a contract with Southern Software to replace the sheriff's current record management software. Major McNeil, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We got notified, or our present vendor for our record management system for the sheriff's office, the jail, and the 911 center is Central Square. And we were notified about a year ago that, let me go back a little further. About 4 years ago, we upgraded with Central Square the record management system for the sheriff's office. At that time, they did not have an update or a new version for the jail management software. About a year ago, over a year ago, they contacted us and said that we needed to upgrade the jail record management system, that platform or that version was no longer going to be supported. So we began looking at options, whether to stay with Central Square, and we began to look at other software for the sheriff's office. We sort of landed or began looking closely at Southern Software, which is a company out of Moore County. We had several demos where they come and presented their product to our staff and to Ira and his team. We met with Ira and his staff about the implementation and the effect it would have on the IT department. Then we began looking at pricing. Since Southern Software is under the Sheriff's Association bid process, so we did not have to go out for bids for this software. Once again, we met with them, discussed the product, make sure it fit for what our present needs were and the needs in the future. They satisfied all our concerns. We then began to work with Kimberly and Lisa on funding, on how to fund this project. The project's going to cost approximately $850,000, $860,000. To compare that, we talked with Central Square just to upgrade the jail software was going to be almost $310,000. So when we started looking at pricing, that's once again where we started leaning to Southern Software. We looked at the maintenance or the yearly cost that we pay yearly for maintenance for the software. With Southern Software, we anticipate we're going to save maybe over $100,000 a year compared to Central Square. So once again, we looked at what is best for the county and what the funding opportunities were. In working with Lisa and the sheriff and Kimberly, we're going to have three funding sources. The first being the 911 fund, which funds the 911 center. That made up the majority of what the cost of the software would be. So out of the $857,000, the 911 fund will pay for $486,000. The sheriff has agreed we'll use $230,000 out of asset forfeiture funds, which will leave under $200,000 that we will use the sheriff's capital fund to fund the total project. In looking at all the factors, the cost, the savings in maintenance cost, and working with Ira and his team, we feel like this is the direction we need to go with Southern Software in the future. So that's why we come before the board asking permission to sign a contract with them.
Any questions or comments for Major?
Consent agenda.
Pleasure of the board to add this to the consent agenda. We'll add this to the consent agenda for next week for approval, please. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Development Services.
Good morning, Commissioners. I hope y'all are well. Sarah Arbor, Harnett County Development Services. So we have two cases that we are bringing before you. The first one is Plan 2504-0001. This is a requested rezoning from the RA 30 to the Commercial Zoning District. The applicant is Central Carolina Equity Partners, LLC, and the property is approximately 5.2 acres located on US 421 North in Cool Springs Road in the Upper Little Township. So the property can be described as an unimproved wooded corner lot. The uses surrounding the property consist of both single-family and commercial uses, to include the Boone Trail Fire Station, as well as a Family Dollar, Dollar General, and a gas station. Services available for the property do include public water, and sewer is not available. Next, we'll take a look at the zoning district compatibility map. So here on the map, you can see that areas to the north and to the east are predominantly residential. Areas to the west and to the south are zoned commercial. There is a property here just across from Coal Springs Road, which was recently rezoned to commercial as well. And taking a look at the land use classification compatibility map, we can see that this property is located in one of our rural center development nodes. So this is, of course, an area of the county which is meant to support small-scale commercial growth. There's several photos of the site which have been provided for review. So as staff moved through their evaluation, we were able to answer everything in the affirmative. Therefore, we are recommending approval, and that is due to compatibility with the underlying land use. And at the May Planning Board meeting, the board did vote 5-0 to recommend approval of the proposed rezoning. And at the meeting, we did have several residents who spoke in opposition to the rezoning, and they were mainly from Frontier Court and the Starlight Drive, the two neighboring communities there. So the residents raised concerns regarding traffic and public safety, the effects on residential property values, detriment to the environment, proximity to the residences themselves, and future incompatible development that may be spurred by commercial development coming in, as well as nuisances such as light, noise, and air pollution. So that's it from staff, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Arbor?
I know the area. I know there's a lot of traffic up there in that area. But since your board voted 100% for it, it's traffic everywhere. So,
Board. Go ahead and put it on for a public hearing next week.
yes, sir.
Go ahead and add this to the agenda for a public hearing next week.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Our next case is Plan 2504-0002. This is a proposed text amendment. This is being proposed by Development Services staff. This would be a revision to the Unified Development Ordinance, Articles 3, 5, 6, 11, and 14. So this text amendment is being requested by the GIS department to Development Services staff so that we can update and correct the ordinance where it pertains to their department and practices. So although this is a lengthy text amendment that amends various articles and sections of our ordinance, in essence, it revises the name of the GIS department as written in the ordinance from E911 to GIS. It updates the language regarding methods used to assign addresses and improve and maintain subdivision and road names to reflect the current GIS department practices. It updates the North Carolina General Statute reference, and it updates a language, to reflect a revision to the GIS department guidelines and applications. So I am open for any questions. Also, Mr. Clint Williams from the GIS department is here this morning if there are any questions for him. Thank you.
Questions, comments for staff? Go ahead and add this for a public hearing next week as well. Thank you much.
Thank you all.
Broadband update and Ripple Fiber introduction. Mr. Ira, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I just felt like it was time for me to come before you guys and just give you a quick broadband update, specifically around a recent CAB grant that we received, and then Ripple Fiber's acquisition of the Cloudwise fiber infrastructure. Could you bring my presentation up? Sorry, Melissa. So just a quick review of where we're at. We're currently working through our GRATE grant process. We haven't received any new GRATE grants, but I just wanted to remind everybody that Brightspeed is currently rolling out fiber across the state, or across the state, but specifically across our county in several areas, and it's a huge grant that's really accomplishing a lot. Spectrum's the second recipient of our GRATE grant side of things, and they're currently doing work across our county also. And then Ripple Fiber is now taking over, and Ripple will explain that a little bit more. I have Kayla Hood will be joining us in a few minutes virtually. Unfortunately, she was a little under the weather and couldn't make it physically here, but she'll be joining us in a little bit virtually. But Ripple Fiber has actually taken over the GRATE grant that Cloudwise received from the state. So just a quick update on that. The CAB grant, of course, Brightspeed has received the CAB grant back in the summertime, and they're rolling out stuff for that. I don't think they've actually started doing anything specifically with the CAB grant funds yet, because they're still working through the GRATE grant funds. The last update we received really didn't show much progress on the CAB grant side, but at GRATE grant they're still moving forward on. And then Spectrum, as of this past April 2025, they have received I'm going to get this confused, the CAB grant, a second CAB grant for Harnett County. It's a little bit smaller grant. It's only $1 million and 300 locations, but there are several factors there that the state felt like they were the best recipients of that. And we're not putting any money into it. They did all the vetting for us. They included me and Mr. Trout in a conference call and discussed all the what was going on there, and Spectrum just made a lot of sense in that particular case for them to go ahead and roll it out to these 300 locations. During that call, they did mention that there is potentially more funding available for the state as a whole, and specifically Harnett County has several potential opportunities to continue expanding broadband. It's pretty neat how Harnett County is just hitting a sweet spot right now for the funding for broadband, and just a lot of places are getting broadband that just the numbers are continuing to come down of the underserved. So this is the CAB grant. This is the map for Spectrum. All the nice green dots are the new Spectrum locations that will come about over the next couple of years. And all these grants, the GRATE grant and the CAB grant, in theory, are supposed to be done by December 2026. So hopefully within the next year and a half, all the locations that are covered under these grants will have a decent broadband service available to them. So with this particular last grant, this really brings down our locations that are considered unserved or underserved under 3,000 to 4,000. So it's definitely under 4,000. If we do receive more, that number could get below 2,000, just based on some potential opportunities we have. Until that's done, though, we don't know. But we're really knocking that number down, and this is all based on mapping and information that the state has gathered and put out there on the NC1 map. So we're, in theory, we're really becoming close to that zero unserved, underserved here in Harnett County, which those last 2,000 are going to be really hard to reach, but there's more opportunities coming along. So any questions around our CAB grants or information there before I introduce Kayla officially? Anything?
Well, I'd just like to say I do appreciate the update. I do remember just a few years ago when we were just beginning to embark on trying to provide this opportunity for our citizens, and it's exciting to see how quickly this has come to fruition. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you for the good job you've done.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been an exciting couple of years around broadband for us as Harnett County. So,
Long time coming.
yeah, yes, ma'am. So I'll introduce Kayla Hood, who's the Director of Government Affairs with Ripple Fiber. Like I said earlier, Ripple Fiber has acquired all of CloudWise's fiber infrastructure. I'm working with CloudWise, just to mention this, they still are doing the fixed wireless side of things. There's a few customers using that. So I'm still trying to gather information, and I'll bring that back to you guys to bring you an update of where that stands. But the core of what CloudWise has done in Harnett County was fiber infrastructure, and Ripple Fiber acquired them back in the fall, and through all the legal processes and everything, now we're here with Ripple Fiber, and they're getting ready to take on the projects here in Harnett County. And Kayla Hood, if you can hear me, let's see if we can transition over to that Teams meeting, Melissa.
Okay.
I hope she's still there. It worked about 8:30.
I am. Are you able to hear me?
I am. Thank you.
Perfect. I am having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'm trying to share my presentation and it's just not allowing it. So I'm going to just give you guys a quick overview, and I'm more than happy to send out the entire presentation after this. So thank you again, Ira, for the introduction, and thanks all for allowing me to have this discussion today. So I wanted to share more specifically about Ripple, give you guys an introduction, but I'm not able to get this to share for some reason. So high-level view, we are currently operating out of 4 states. North Carolina is our major footprint. We're based out of Charlotte, but expanding all throughout the state. So we're in North Carolina, South Carolina, Massachusetts, and Michigan currently. And over the next few months, announcing and expanding into 8 additional states. For the particular grant for Harnett County, so for the GREAT grant, that's just shy of 900 locations that we'll be servicing, and for the locally funded grant, that's just shy of 3,500 passings. So with that, we do have all of our permits submitted for the entirety of the county for the DOT permits. We have a handful of permits that we are pending for the locally funded for the town of Coates. But we are, as soon as we have completion of those, our designs are completed and we are ready to start construction. I do have some information about our construction process, and then also some information for residents as well. We, of course, we are going to be distributing door hangers to let people know about upcoming construction, neighborhood by neighborhood, and they'll also get mailers, which will have all of our contact information, any questions that they may have about the construction, any yard signs, things like that. So that's upcoming as well. And that's it from my side.
Okay. Thank you, Kayla. Is there any questions for Kayla at this moment? Yeah, sorry that didn't work, Kayla. I apologize. I don't know. You gotta love technology sometimes. You should call the IT department about that.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good deal. Thank you for the update, sir. At this time, we'll discuss a request to approve a project ordinance for the Jet Point Hangar project. Sir Bate, good morning, sir.
Good morning. We've got big shoes to fill this morning. Before you is a capital project ordinance for our corporate area development, which is across Airport Road from where the terminal is now. 5.6 million total, with the majority coming from capital reserves, up to the point we could get grant funding for that. That's our intention, to get grant funding, but we're not there yet. I think $500,000 has already come from grant funding. However, where we are right now, that's what we have. This will be for a development for people to come in and build hangars on, ultimately to bring corporate jets and what have you. Just some simple math. $10 million planes is the same as approximately $250,000 houses as far as tax revenue. So just the economic driver, and we like your approval this morning.
Questions? Pleasure of the board to add this to the consent. Go ahead and add this to the consent agenda for next week as well. Thank you, sir. Discuss the FY 25-26 recommended budget. Mr. Trout and Ms. McFadden, good morning.
Yes, we're excited that we can move forward with going into more detail, and so Lisa's prepared a presentation for you, and I'll chime in wherever I feel like I need to, but Lisa is going to drive the ship.
Thank you. And Kimberly can jump in as well. And if you have any questions, we've got several department heads here that could jump in as well. Just on your stuff. Now's your chance to ask for stuff. To get started, our general fund recommended budget is $183,457,942. The recommended budget for the Harnett Regional Water Department is $50,595,000, and the solid waste budget is $8,972,554. In the budget document itself, on page 24, is the general fund budget overview summary, and this is just the breakout of the revenues and the expenses. Our top three categories for expenses are public safety, human services, and education. On page 25 of the budget document is our revenue summary, and this is just a breakout of where our revenues come from. Our top three revenue sources are ad valorem taxes, sales tax, and service charges. For our recommended budget, in order to balance our revenues and expenses, we are appropriating $8,042,036 of fund balance. And this is about $4.7 million less than what we appropriated last year. At this time, the recommended budget does not include a tax rate increase, but if the board chose to increase the tax rate, 1 penny would generate approximately $1.5 million.
Do you have the number on a quarter cent sales tax?
I do not. Is that something that you would like for us to look into?
Yes, ma'am. I always like to have that number handy because we can do a quarter cent.
You got your sales tax? Okay.
Well, you don't have to get it right now, but it's, that's something we can do without legislative approval up to a quarter cent. So everybody pays that.
Okay.
Property.
So when we start developing our annual budget every year, we are always focusing on complying with our legal, financial, regulatory, and policy requirements. We want to make sure that we're maintaining our current level of services and programs for our residents. And any new recommended programs, we want to make sure that that's meeting the county's most urgent needs.
And in order to recruit and retain good employees, we have to be able to stay competitive with our surrounding towns and counties. We don't have to be the best, but we have to be competitive. In order to do that, we're recommending a cost of living increase of 3%, to continue with the 1.5 merit pay increases, a 1% 401K for all non-sworn officer positions. Currently, right now, all our sworn officers receive a 5% allocation to the 401K, and all our other employees are only getting 2%. Harnett County is well below our surrounding areas in the match for our 401K allocations. We're at 2%. This would increase us to 3%. A lot of our surrounding areas are anywhere from 3 to 5%. We're also having an increase in our employer paid benefits. The retirement and health insurance costs have increased. And in order to meet our growing demands for our county services, we are recommending 14 new full-time positions in our general fund departments, and those include Animal Services, Department of Social Services, Emergency Management, Hearts, Human Resources, Legal, the Library, Sheriff's Office, and the Tax Department. We're also recommending 5 positions in Harnett Regional Water and 2 for solid waste. We're also recommending 22 reclassifications to accommodate changes in duties for these positions in the general fund departments, and those are Animal Services, Building Inspections, Social Services, Facility Maintenance, Finance, the Library, Parks and Recreation, Register of Deeds, Sheriff's Office, Soil and Water, Tax, and Veteran Services. So over the next few slides, these are recommended expansions, and these include everything except for positions within these departments. All the detailed information about these expansion requests are in the budget document under each of the departments. For the library, we're requesting to implement an early literacy program and implement in-service staff training, and to implement or increase the number of their electronic resources. For Parks and Rec, to design a county parks logo. And you can see on here that the Spraymaster has been marked out. That's because they had requested it for next year, and we had recommended it, but they were able to purchase that this fiscal year, so we're taking it out of next year's budget. For administration, we want to implement a countywide language service program, implement a mobile application for county information, and to implement a rapid process improvement program. For Board of Elections is to increase election worker pay by $15 per day. For facilities is to purchase a new custodian vehicle. Under the governing body is to allocate funds for the Dixie Youth Baseball World Series tournament, and to increase the annual salary for the Board of Commissioners. For Central Carolina Community College, to increase their operating and capital needs by $338,731, and this will address the increased costs for utilities, maintenance and custodial supplies, salary and benefits, retirement and insurance costs, to replace an HVAC controller and boiler, to upgrade the ventilation system in their Neltec classroom, and other maintenance projects such as painting, parking lots, doors, and fire alarms. For Harnett County Schools, we're recommending a $3 million increase to their current expenses, along with continuing with the $1.4 million for maintenance projects and another $1 million for capital outlay. Some of the current projects going on right now is the construction of the Flatwoods Middle School, Lillington Shawtown Elementary School, gym addition, and the child nutrition freezer facility. For social services, to implement an after-hours drug test screening services. For emergency medical services, to fund the operating costs to outsource the daily operations for the new morgue. For the rescue districts, a 10% increase across the board to address their operational cost increase. For Hearts, to fund the 10% match grants to replace the 3 transit vehicles and to install a security camera system. For Harnett Regional Water's budget, the recommended budget is $50,595,000. On page 124 of the budget document, this is their breakout of their budget summary for their revenues and expenses based on categories. On page 125 is their revenue summary, and this is where they get their revenue sources, or their revenues or sources come from. For their expansion request under the Sewer Collections Division, to purchase 3 backup generators for 3 sewer lift stations, to purchase an excavator and a trailer sewer jetter. Water Distribution Division is to purchase a standby generator for a water booster station, replace 3 vehicles, and to purchase a new one for the recommended utility construction inspector position. For the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant, to replace a mower and a generator for the maintenance building. For the South Harnett wastewater treatment plant is to replace 1 vehicle and to purchase another new vehicle for the utility system pump technician position and to purchase a new trailer for the scissor lift. And as part of the recommended budget, as part of the recommended budget, the Harnett Regional Water CIP was included, and that approval is part of the budget approval process. For solid waste for fiscal year, the 26 recommended budget, it is $8,972,554. On page 134 of the budget document is their budget summary of their revenues and expenses. On page 135 is their breakout of revenues. And their expansion request this year is to extend the hours of the landfills. So the total cost of the general fund recommended expansion is $5,664,914. The total cost for expansions for Harnett Regional Water is $1,396,196. And the total expansions for solid waste is $133,312. The recommended fees start on page 196 of the budget document, and those include fee changes such as increases, decreases, name changes, and in Appendix 1, it also has the justifications for these changes. So the departments that are included in this are development services for the subdivision plat reviews, conditional rezoning applications. In emergency services, there are various operational construction permits, Harnett Regional Jetport, the fuel cells and equipment usage fees. Health Department, the vaccination fees. For the IT department, it's software subscription and support services fees for the municipalities. Parks and Rec, the after-school and summer camp fees and softball fees. For the tax department, it's for advertising of unpaid parcels. In solid waste, it's changes for the waste hauler fee permits, tipping fees, and municipal solid waste. And Harnett Regional Water is a development meter fees, industrial user permit fees, and the fats, oils, and grease violation fees. We've had 8 fire districts ask for tax increases, and those range from 3/4 cent to 5-cent increases. And the justifications for these increases can be found starting on page 178 of the budget document. Most of these are for increases in staffing and purchasing of equipment. So questions. What questions do y'all have for us? Is there kind of changes do you want to see?
Well, I would like to see, we talked about it, but until we know the low wealth, we got to pay that or not, but we need to do everything possible to get the teacher supplement money to where it needs to be, whatever we have to do that. We've been talking about it for a long time. When I was on the school board, it was talked about a lot, and we never got to it. But I think we the time is, we need to get it if we can, or whatever. How long before we would know, we can't know about the low wealth thing for a while yet, right?
Chairman?
July now.
I have some information on that from a meeting that I had with our state elected officials. It's not likely that we're going to see a budget approved prior to July 1 based on the conversation we had with them yesterday, which means that the school will make a request from the county to receive the funding that we set aside in contingency in case the low wealth funding did not get received by them from the state. That means we're probably looking at upwards of $5 million that will need to come from our fund that we had set aside in the budget and approved by you. When that happens, that's going to establish our new base at $35 million. And based on the request the school made, they had $35 million as their baseline, and then also upwards of $9 million for all the things that they looked at. What that means is that'll put us over, just to go up to their base, $2 million over what we have in the budget right now for an expansion. So the expansion request for the school district will go from $3 million to $5 million just to establish the base. Anything over that amount will have to be will be what's available for them in order to help with their supplement and the other items they listed in that $9 million number. So it'll be a large task right now. Unless you do a tax increase, it would come from the existing funds we have in our general fund from unused funds, which we can do a portion of it for sure. As you mentioned, our amount was $4 million less this year from our reserve usage than was last year. So part of it would take us up to that number. But I will say by the end of the year, unused reserves amount ends up being less because we've been doing very well at hiring and retaining positions. So the amount of unused, say, salaries and et cetera that number has been dwindling. And so we are actually potentially using some of our reserves. So I think that we'll have a good number very soon from the school district. I talked to the superintendent about that, and I think our number will be provided to us, and then we can look at our options as we go into June here as to what our options are, whether we want to continue to use our reserve that we have, or do we need to do a combination of reserves and look at potentially a tax increase that would cover part of that in order to do what you're talking about in order to assist our schools.
Now you know why I asked about the quarter cents.
Say that one more time.
But now you understand why I was asking about the quarter cents.
Well, I'll be honest with you. We're going to continue to have this problem because the more charter schools and the more private schools that pop up in this county, and we having to pay the same for each people in this county, people for the private schools and the charter schools as well as the public schools. And it seems like to me the public schools going to be the ones that's left behind. But it is what it is. It's just that a lot of people don't understand it. And that's all I gotta say. I mean, we need to start lobbying our legislature. It's the problem we have with the education system here in this county. And let them know where we at. And as far as funding and all of that, you know, that's all I can say. My kids are not in school. I'm glad they're not these days, simply because education is a powerful, powerful piece. And every day, we put more emphasis on everything else other than the education.
Just to answer your question real quick.
Hang on one second.
Sure.
Brent, if I understand right, the $5.7 million that we have to cover of the low wealth money is included in the current budget.
No, it is not.
It's not. Okay.
No, and that was because we created it with the idea that the possibility they would receive that funding before the end of the year, which would then mean it would also continue into the next budget year, and therefore we wouldn't need to fund it. But if we get to July, you know, and it could be that after July 1 in the final budget, the legislature actually does provide that low wealth funding, we won't need it. So it may be that we're putting it into contingency again in next year's budget on the off chance that they do come up with that money and that if they put the formula back. So we can create it as a contingency item in our budget, but we'll have to understand in contingency, it is part of the budget. The expectation that it will be spent just gives us flexibility towards the end of the year not to utilize it.
What kind of number have you got for us?
Yeah, so we did a study on this last August of '24, and this is estimated because it varies as far as the articles of what we look at. So a quarter cent would generate roughly about 3.9 million.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Sure.
I just think we gotta have a lot more conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I
And
just
get
wanted
this-
the number out there so we would know what it was.
I agree.
And Ms. Honeycutt, give me the look.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
One more. So next week, we're having the public hearing on the budget at 6 PM. And then we have the three work sessions, if needed, during your next 3 meetings, with the budget approval scheduled for June 16th.
And so, well, the one thing I will say is we look at those work sessions as you dig in deeper into the budget and you see something you want to know, is that included? Is that something that we want to add back into the budget? As you look at potential other expansion items, we'll schedule it on the agenda. And if there's no items to discuss, we want to make sure is that we're putting it on the agenda. So if you think of something between that, it's there available so that you can have those discussions as a board related to any budget items that you may have. And maybe we get to that item on that meeting and there's nothing to discuss. We'll say that and move on to the next agenda item.
One thing is, do we have an idea what we're on track for, how much residual money we'll have left out of this year's budget?
So right now, I think I'm calculating it right around 26% assigned.
26% of the budget left over?
Oh, no, not the budget, but I'm talking about the fund balance.
Okay.
The budget that's left over probably is going to be around 3 million right now.
So that'll make up a
It could.
good piece.
And that's what I was
so far.
referring to, is it could, that money carried over could end up being what we utilize as part of our effort to meet the needs of the school that they'll have based on not receiving the low wealth funding and being able to help with their teacher supplement and other needs that they have above the 35 million number.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discuss and consider a request for approval of a letter for support for the Harnett County Zip Code Initiative. Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting thing, last September, attending the International City Managers Association, I ended up attending a session that dealt with a zip code coalition that had been formed by some communities out in California. Their whole purpose is they need independent zip codes to be created for their communities. So I talked to the chairman, who this has been a subject of his concern for many years, is that we need to create new zip codes especially in the southwest section of our county. So got with these guys, started learning more about what they were doing. At a meeting about 3 months ago, they asked who else would want to be included in a U.S. House resolution to add zip codes to their county, or in case most of them are cities. So our name was included, and so right now our name is included on House Resolution 3095. It will be heard in committee May 21st if it stays on schedule. That then would be, if approved out of committee, then would go to the floor to be considered. What it would do is it would direct the United States Postal Service to work with us to create new zip codes for our county. The laws state that Congress can direct it, so even if the U.S. Postal Service has said no, which they've said to us, we're not going to create a new post office or zip code in that area, Congress says yes, you have to, and so they would have to create that. We're with many other cities. There's, I think, 75 that'll end up being on this bill, and so we need a letter of support. Without a letter of support, according to the rules, they cannot consider us as a community to get a zip code. So in addition to the letter of support from this board, which is the most critical, we'll start working on potentially getting other letters of support from organizations that would benefit from us having a zip code. But this is the most important one. And then it'll eventually, hopefully, go to the floor and be considered. A year ago, Representative Boebert put this through. She sits on this committee, and it made it through the House and did not make it through the Senate last year. So the hope is, restarting the process, we can get it through the House and that there'll be enough support in the Senate for us to get this through. And then so hopefully maybe we can get some help in creating zip codes in this area.
Motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the letter of support for House Bill 3095. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
And I would like to go ahead and add, we're so blessed that, Brad Knott is, working on this and kind of spearheading that. And since we no longer have a lobbying firm, announced that we also have his office going to be here once a week now. So we'll be able to be in his ear and in his staff's ear in order to tackle some one-on-one. So that's outstanding. Discuss and consider a resolution opposing House Bill 765. Please note action may be taken on this item as well.
Yes, Chairman. I was contacted by Commissioner Jaggers. He had been having a conversation with Representative Penny about this bill, and so he asked that we put something on the agenda to oppose this bill. This bill is very egregious to counties as it relates to our local control for zoning, housing numbers. It is one of those bills that we really do not want to see move forward. So far, the positive is that it did not get approved out before crossover. However, that procedurally they added an increase in fee, so now it is still eligible for crossover. So this bill is not dead. It is something that we need to continue to oppose. We had discussions with our state representatives yesterday. They believe this is something that we need to be watching closely. They do not believe that it will get approved, but they're also saying there are some individuals that could help move it forward, at least to a vote. So I ask that you approve this resolution opposing this bill, and we'll send that information to our state representatives.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and second for the resolution opposing House Bill 75. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I did speak to our representative about this House Bill 765 to get a better understanding of the bill and how the bill is going to affect us here in Harnett County. And it was stated to me they don't think it's going to get approved, but you just don't know these days what's going to happen. I think we're doing the right thing.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously as well, Madam Clerk. This time we will review applications to serve on boards and committees. There is only one. We have received a recommendation for reappointment for Mr. Gordon Springle to serve on the Johnson Lee Harnett Community Action Board of Directors.
Mr. Chairman, can we table this to the next meeting? Because I think all the board members here need it. I don't know if anybody on the board wants to serve on that or not.
I'm on the board. I'm on that committee.
You already on it?
And I don't understand why we don't go ahead and approve Mr. Gordon Springer, because he's worked on that committee for several years prior to being appointed for this. It's good access to it. I recommend that we move forward with this.
I have a recommendation to move forward with this, and I also have a recommendation to postpone until next week. It's the pleasure of the board. We'll go ahead.
Yeah, I'm making a motion that we go ahead and approve him, because he does a lot of work on that board.
I've got two recommending that we postpone this. So is this time is
Well,
of the
usually,
essence on this?
not to be the parliamentarian here, but usually if there's a motion to table, that takes precedent over anything else before you consider anything else.
To be the parliamentarian, the correct motion would not be to table, it would be to postpone since we're going to address this next week. We'll go ahead and postpone this until our next meeting.
I'd like to know why we postponed it.
The consensus of the majority of the board is requesting.
But there gotta be a reason for it.
Mr. Jaggers just stated that he would like to take a look at that and see what the board is about. Somebody else would be. He can
Well,
find
see what the board is about, it's the only board in this county that works to help repair homes and do things for those that are in need, families and all.
Well, I would like a little more say in who goes on that board other than just rubber stamping it. And I'm
We're
not
not
saying
rubber
he's not the
stamping
one.
anything because
Ms.
he has
McCoy, you
served
asked me
on it.
why. I don't feel comfortable voting on it until I know more about who's going to do it and why they're doing it, what they do on this board. All I ask is to wait till next meeting. And that's what I've asked to do.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
motion and a second to postpone. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. You opposed?
Yes,
One opposed.
I'm opposed.
We'll postpone this until our following meeting. Okay, County Manager's Report, Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. The first item is, make sure everybody's aware, we have a town hall tonight at 6 p.m. in the Irwin City Hall with Commissioner Morris. We had a great time. Commissioner McCoy and I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the Community Center Dogtown Alumni Association. Excited that they are breaking down and moving forward on their building. The county gave money to the, or gave land to them to build a building on, and it's exciting to see that they've now started that project. We had just completed our spring cleanup, and I wanted to mention a few numbers that were provided by staff. The spring cleanup, they had 509 volunteers that volunteered over 1,350 hours. 1,900 bags of trash, 53 roadways clean, over 27 cleanups. And in addition, over 850 tires and other large items collected. So very successful cleanup, one of the best ones that we've had. So excited to see folks step up and volunteer to help pick up. That's all I have, Chairman.
Outstanding. I understand we have a need for closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board go into closed session for the following purposes: to consult with the county legal staff in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning the handling of certain litigation and claims, including the following listed case: County of Harnett versus 3M and all, MDL number 218MM 2873 RMG, and consultation with the instructions to the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating the proposed contract for the acquisition of real property. This motion is made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-31811A3 and 5.
Second.
A motion and a second to go into closed session. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Move to closed session.
You can fly over people and do the job on them too.
Well, I tell you, it's deadly to be a
This is
squirrel.
actually for Chris. He just. Chris,